Rita. Oh,
Emily.
Broadcasting? Yeah.
yes.
So, person A. So mine was reading of Slappin' and Seal. And it says, in this book, the authors take us step by step through specific examples of distortions, stereotypes, and misinformation regarding the portrayal of Native Americans in children's books. Which elements are most surprising to you? How does it speak to Woodring's mission for social justice? And which gives a website. And I think the very beginning wasn't so surprising to me, but towards the end, the different ways it's viewed, like I think it's called lifestyles. It was a little bit more interesting. So, like for example, towards the end, she started talking about do Native people and their communities contrast unfavorable with the norm of white middle class suburbia, and it was that stuff that was most surprising to me, like towards the end, the stuff that comparing or are Native people and their communities seen as their own cultural norm. Like that stuff I never really thought about in the past. I mean, we all know that the history books when it comes to the way Christopher Columbus came here and the first Thanksgiving is all a bit westernized to make it look pretty and awesome that they wanted us to come and, you know, culturize it in their perspective. But I never thought about the rest of that stuff in that sense. So, like, it had asked whether or not discuss Native American as something in the past that's gone, or is the culture represented as something that's continuity, which is what one of the other articles was talking about, how Native Americans view themselves as not something, their time is not like our time. Like, it's a
Not past
circle of
present.
life kind of stuff, you know. So those were the stuff that I thought were most interesting. Let's see. I think it's very, as far as with the Woodring's mission of social justice, part of Woodring's mission was that it honors cultural awareness and diversities, and I think it does a pretty good job of making you aware. So I think it speaks for Woodring's mission pretty well. So
Yeah.
I was shocked at some of the. I mean, reading the books where they were like especially the picture books, where I don't remember seeing any kind of like our animal like picture books like 10 Little Indians. I don't even remember seeing any of those.
That was probably more when I was in school. I mean, do you remember?
I do
Because
remember that.
Nicole and I were about 10 years older than Tori, so
Okay.
definitely I remember like being in elementary school that sort of stuff was probably fading out by
Yeah,
then, but it
definitely.
was still in schools. But yeah, it was interesting how it was really clear with the pictures, but then when it got more into really thinking about stuff towards the end, then that's when it was a little more fuzzy, I think, and you really had to stop and think about it. But the pictures were very obvious that was offensive, or
Yeah, definitely.
or it would be offensive.
Yeah.
And I noticed a lot of the text when it's being portrayed accurately. It's a lot of like we. It's not like the white people or them. It's we are our tradition. So it was more from like a first person, whereas
Oh, that's a good point.
The European or Westernized version was a lot of they or
Them versus us.
yeah. It wasn't the we, it was they. Well, they do this or they do that. But it's, I don't know, it made it a little easier to see which were portrayed it accurately.
Yeah, and if it's from their perspective, then that will probably, that's the way that it should be portrayed, because it's how they want to be portrayed and how they saw things too, as opposed to just how white people wrote about it.
And a lot of our history books are white people wrote
yeah.
about it, you know.
Yeah.
So it was very misrepresentation for all the different tribes throughout this country, really. And you?
There is a delay.
I
Is
can't help
there?
myself.
I thought it was interesting about that article. The one example that stuck out to me was describing like the Native American man as like this, just like this mean, like intimidating. I never like would think like, wow, you really do think that because literature and media portray Native Americans that way, and why is that? Like, why do they do that towards like just that population, but not really? I don't know. Like, why are they the warriors? You know?
They're scary when you think about it. Growing up, Native Americans were scary.
Right.
You know, it was almost like a portrayal of justification of why it ended with, you know, European culture came in and why Christopher Columbus slaughtered them and all that stuff. It was almost like, well, because they were mean, they were vicious, they were warriors, they were uncivilized. It was a justification of why they came here and did all that stuff, it feels like.
When it seems like a lot of the things that have been unjust to Native Americans, they're still pretty recent, and it's just not talked about as much as, you know, the civil rights movement. It's like it's kind of swept under the rug a little bit, it seems like. I took a class, Native American Studies, and I was just shocked at how recent some of, like, you know, 70s or in the 60s that stuff was going on that most people have never even heard about. And so it's kind of, I mean, it's interesting to even see all this and connect it all.
It makes me wonder, though, like, is it because there's a guiltness coming because this is still their land that we just stole from them? So whatever comes up Native American, do they just sweep it under the rug because, like, in reality, this is their land, this is ours, you know what I mean?
It's maybe guilt.
There's a guilt, there's a guilt feeling there that comes across.
It's more, I think it's easier to deny something than it is to accept it and accept the consequences that come with it.
Especially since we brought the disease and killed over half of them, and, you know, it's the Native Americans, it's a very dying culture.
Well, if you think about it, with slavery and civil rights, a lot of that happened in the South, and so it's very easy for us to think like how crazy that would happen because it wasn't going on here as much.
We're younger, right? The Washington State's a lot younger than.
Yeah, but in the North in general. But then it's kind of like that the Native American nations they're all over the place, so it's not just, you know, put into one area. It's not just. It's like all over the United States, and so it's just, yeah, I wonder if that's why is people just don't want to be accountable for it or really think about it. But definitely kind of got off on a little tangent.
It actually worked because it went into, so I had B, and it was the Not for Sport article, and it was as long as Indian team names, mascots, and logos remain a part of school athletic programs, children are being taught to tolerate, perpetuate stereotyping and racism, and did Munson pursue that this is true? So, kind of going with our talk of the guilt, I said, I think that too many times, like, they're making excuses, because she listed a lot of excuses in her articles, and then what her rebuttal would be, and I think a lot of the time it's easier to just excuse these videos and, you know, just put it out of the eye, so, like, put it in the public eye because it's an issue, but then all of a sudden you stop hearing about it, and it's like,
no one wants to admit it.
No one wants to deal with the consequences of, oh, this is racism, this is stereotyping, and by perpetuating it and allowing it in places such as like the Bell, where everybody sees the Washington Redskins logo, everybody sees it, and so I think the Chiefs, so like having it would just cause so many problems that they're like, oh, you know, we'll talk about it and then we'll just do the brush aside. And eventually people will stop talking about it, and then it comes up again and it kind of just repeats. It's never actually solved. So.
Yeah.
Well, I was. Well, what?
Sorry. No, I was just gonna say I love how the author had all these rebuttals about, like, oh, well, don't you want us to honor your culture? And the author was like, yes, but naming a sports team after us and depicting us in this way is not really honoring You know,
Yeah,
I just
that's-
like I feel like that's so true, and I don't understand why. Like going back to it, why are Native Americans the only population that has like sports teams and mascots after them? It's just strange
Yeah,
to me.
that's,
I didn't think
Good
that's a
point.
good point. Yeah, it was funny too because as I was reading and she was listing this stuff, that's where my head went.
With the NFL.
Yeah, well, not just the NFL, but like, well, it's part of history, like, because that's, my husband and I have talked about this last year when the Redskins thing came up too, and we're like, well, it's been there so long, and it's like, and then she'd had the rebuttal, I'm like, oh, good point,
Yes.
like she was really
Point.
pushing my thinking and pushing me past that acceptance of, well, it's just the way it is. Well, it shouldn't be the way it is.
but there's groups of people who throughout history have fought those sort of things, like women, African Americans, and now it's kind of like the gay culture, like so. But
LGBT.
yeah, I couldn't remember the whole.
So long
so-
acronym.
But I just feel like maybe in the future it will be
addressed.
addressed, and it will be the Native American people's turn to kind of have
There's
They're-
turned in a spotlight.
yeah,
they're
and just like
turning and making-
squash all that stuff that is just like kind of putting them
Offensive.
down. And yeah, I still think I wrote, because I think this is really interesting, that my middle school
Yeah,
was
I saw
named
that.
Marysville Junior High School, and I drove by like last year and I saw that the name had changed to Totem Middle School, and I'm like, that's so backwards, because you think that it would be the reverse. It just didn't make any sense. And then but Marysville has such a large
Native,
influence,
Mhm.
and at the same time you would think that influence would cause them to not do that, and that respect the Native American.
It'd be a good question to bring up the
Nation.
Tulalip tribe.
You wonder their involvement in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do they want that name sort of to cement the idea that this is a native land?
I do remember when my sister went to Marysville Pilchuck that they had a discussion about removing.
Yeah, the Tomahawks logo did change.
Did it?
I think so.
It used
They're
to
still
be,
the Tomahawks.
They're
right?
still a
yeah,
tomahawk.
but it's. I don't think. I think it used to be. Didn't it used to be a native with?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and now it's just
A tomahawk.
the tomahawk itself, which is the.
And that's the gesture that they would do at sporting events.
I know. I went.
And
when was
it just seemed just so wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just shocking, but I don't know.
I thought of Marysville, but because my cousins went there and they didn't really have any issues with it, and so I wondered if, since everything that's happened at Marysville, if
That will change.
yeah.
Possibly.
Anytime will tell.
But and who knows how many times that conversation has come up, because she went there 10 years ago and it was an issue then, and I think that's when they maybe made some changes, but who knows. So I had, it was just talking about the 4 guidelines that were laid out in the thoughts on teaching Native American literature, and just it really opened my eyes to different ways of looking at it, because there is a lot out there, but it probably doesn't follow all of those guidelines.
No.
And the one where it said that a lot of the older stuff is translated incorrectly, and using the comparison to Shakespeare, it's like, wow, if this is how they translated Shakespeare in this same way, this is what it would look like. It just really gave some perspective to how incorrect it probably is, and how Native Americans are probably portrayed incorrectly in that. The other thing that really stuck out to me was how a lot of the times that people don't have the permission to use the recordings and translations, or it's really important to check that, because a lot of it is so valued in their culture that they wouldn't be okay with people just using it nilly-willy.
Yeah, I like that guideline. It's definitely a resource to use when teaching, I think, Native American culture and literature in the classroom, so that you're not putting out there the misrepresentation of the Native American cultures, because you want because at some point it does need to be their turn to be in the spotlight, like we said earlier. And the only way to do that is to make the younger generations aware of how badly misinterpreted they are and misrepresented, so that they can grow up knowing that they have to fight for that culture too.
Mm-hmm. Do I add anything, Emily?
No, I pretty much agree with everything you're saying, and I don't, like, during elementary and middle school, I don't really remember. I don't know, like, I feel like the first, what is that novel, the of a part-time Indian, the true story of a,
Oh, the true story of a part-time Indian.
yeah, that's like the first, like, Native American literature that I remember being exposed to, and that was freshman or sophomore year of college.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't really remember, like, I am part Native American, so I, like, know the history, like, from my family, but I never, like, in elementary school at least, I don't remember reading Native American literature, and I think that that's sad. Like, I think,
I
definitely
don't
needs to,
remember reading much about it either, aside from what we had, which was definitely the 10 Little Indians kind of stuff.
yeah.
And that's not real. I mean, that's just using them as characters. And
Mm-hmm.
I do remember in high school, in my English class, we had to watch something, and what's that one movie with Kevin Costner?
Dances with Wolves.
Yes, that's the one. I had
Oh.
to watch that and interpret that, and that, was probably one of my earliest memories of right now, because that's what I can think of, the representation of Native American, and that's not really a very good
Yeah.
representation, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that there was literature in high school or middle school, but I just don't really remember it, and who knows if it was even authentic, if it followed the guidelines in the book, so.
My high school literature was European white guys.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
Shakespeare, we didn't actually discuss like other authors unless they were from hundreds of years ago and from Europe. So it really limits like what you get.
Yeah,
based
definitely.
on what your teachers choose and what appropriate books to teach. Anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So my jigsaw doesn't really go with the other readings. Mine was on the poetry chapter, but I thought it was really interesting about his point about stating or building appreciation for poetry is just simply by exposing students to it and not really having expectations or like assignments connected to it. I really like the idea of like reading a poem each day or like putting a poem up on the board every day and just having students take it in, because that was never really done for me. Like the whole part about digging deeper, trying to find the true meaning is like my experience with poetry. Like I dreaded poetry units because I couldn't come up with the rhyming words, and I like never knew what I always wanted to have the right answer, so I didn't know like, well, what is the real theme of this poem? I have no idea.
I don't think I liked poetry growing up, so my teachers must have done something right.
Yeah.
Because I didn't hate it, and I remember, oddly enough, at Marysville Pilchuck, I had an English teacher who and we did a poetry unit, and I was all for it. We had our own. He made it so we made a class poetry book, and everybody put their letters. And
I found mine that I did in 5th grade.
Nice.
Yeah, I did mine in 10th grade, so I didn't hate poetry. I enjoyed writing poetry.
And that goes with what the book was talking about. I mean, if you're able to write it and, collect it in the way that you wanted to, then that helps.
Yeah, so I mean, they must have done something good. I mean, I don't remember much, but I don't have a hatred towards poetry. So
more than a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm with Emily. Like, I had the same experience where I was just I felt embarrassed because I didn't know what they were looking for, and so I just stayed quiet, and I just learned to dread poetry. The 1st grade class I'm in does 3 poems a week, and they put them in their poetry book, but it's like on a chart paper, and they sing it or they read it together, and then they get to color a picture that goes with it, and it goes in a poetry notebook, and the kids love it. But it's, it's just learning poems. It's not analyzing them, and I mean,
It's rhyming. It's rhyming poems, isn't it? Like
it's all over the place,
Yeah.
really. But they learn little chants, and then that becomes things like when they're doing movement stuff, just if they're getting squirrely, then they might go back to a poem that they've done recently. And so that I see as a way to incorporate in the classroom and have it be a more pleasurable experience than, okay, I'm going to show you this poem, let's pick it apart.
Let's pick it apart. I think
Yeah.
it's the picking apart that everybody dreads. Because really, poetry, it's art.
It's meant to be enjoyed.
Yeah, it's art. It's interpreted very differently by a variety of people. And so I think for a teacher to say this isn't the right interpretation is probably where a lot of people end up hating poetry, because you don't know what the interpretation is, and then you sort of feel dumbed down, I guess, as to, well, I don't know what it means, so I guess I'm stupid, you know? So I think that's where people, yeah, I mean, to me, poetry is art. It's just like going to the museum, looking at Picasso, and interpreting it. It interprets very differently.
Yeah, so I think I've always liked reading it, but I think just like writing it I've always had trouble with because I've always felt like it needs to rhyme or it needs to like I don't know, be perfect. I mean, I'm a perfectionist in writing that way, but like poetry has always been threatening to me just because it like when you read like mentor texts of poetry, it always flows so perfectly, you know, and to try to achieve that is difficult, especially as a young kid. So, but my
Go ahead, sorry.
oh, well, just part of my discussion was to pick a poem from chapter 8 and share it. So I guess I'll just read. I picked the one, I like it when it's mizzly. And so it goes, I like it when it's mizzly and just a little drizzly, so everything looks far away and make believe and frizzly. I like it when it's foggy and sounding very froggy. I even like it when it rains on streets and weepy window panes, and catkins in the poplar tree and me. So I like that one because it just like flows really well, and but some of the words like aren't real words, which is something that my teachers never really told me. Oh, like mizzly or frizzly, you know, just get it to rhyme, and if it, because it just I like it because it rolls off your tongue when you read it. I just feel like it's fun to read and it would be fun to write too.
Which is where kids are too. It's fun to read nonsense words. Kids love nonsense words.
Yeah.
Really, so poems like that would be good in the classroom. I didn't have a teacher who, I think my teacher, looking back, I don't remember recalling it having to rhyme. Like you were saying, like you feel like it has to rhyme. I never had that feeling, so I guess a teacher must have done something in the past to make me feel like it never had to rhyme, because I never was worried about it rhyming.
So the book that I did was in 5th grade, and it was obviously around Christmas, because everything in here is winter related or Christmas related. But I remember we did a week or like 1 or 2 poems a week, and we had like a mentor poem that she had written, and then we would write it as a class, and then we would write our own, but then we would edit it. And so we got that feedback of, well, what's in this type of poem? Like we have limericks and we have haikus, but we had specific instruction, and I feel like because I knew what was in each poem, it wasn't so overwhelming, like, oh, this is what they mentioned in the book, that haikus are often with nature, and that's part of why it draws people away. But I think when kids have the opportunity to write their own, it helps, because I love this book. That book got me to actually buy a poetry book. My first poetry book, only poetry book, at a 5th grade book sale, and it's like 200 pages.
I love haikus because they don't have to make sense.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite writing. They're short and it doesn't have to make sense.
And that's why I didn't like haikus, because I like things to make sense.
That's funny.
Yeah, one of the types of poetry that I really like, and I think students would really like too, are the concrete poems, like the ones that are printed in the shape of the subject, like the flamingo. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that makes poems fun.
It does. So
That's pretty much it for mine.
What are we doing now?
There's some questions
Oh, yeah.
like about videos and what about the white privilege stuff? That it seems like we had all read that article before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you mention when you read it, Emily?
Yeah, I did. I think I read it freshman year of college, and then I also read it in another education class.
We read it over the summer, so it's very, very fresh.
Well, we did an activity. I wonder if there's a chance that it was the same class because it was family interactions. Have you had that class?
No, I don't have
So
to take that, but
in this class, what? Oh, I thought you were like.
No, I was itching, sorry.
So in this class, it was actually, we did an activity to where we all got in a line and we held hands and they asked us different questions like, did you ever go to summer camp? And if you did, you take a step forward. And if you didn't, would you take a step back or stay?
You stayed.
You stayed. And so it was really interesting to watch people start to
because they had
go
positive things that would happen
Yeah.
and then negative things. So
Yeah.
like if a negative thing happens, you had to move back.
Yeah, so it really gave a whole nother level of perspective to it because
It felt weird.
it was kind of, yeah, it was weird when you and I were holding hands
Yeah.
and we like
You had to let go because you were so far apart, and I think that letting go is the moment where it kind of like your light bulb goes on over your head. You're like, oh wow, the privileges I've had compared to somebody else because I just lost touch with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I felt awkward because I was one of the people in the very front and I'm like, oh, I never really thought about this and it really made me uncomfortable.
It really did.
So,
but then being one of the ones in the very back, which was me, also felt uncomfortable because I'm thinking, oh, what have I missed out on? Like, I feel like I don't want to be looked at like, oh my gosh, your life was so hard, because I didn't have a hard life. I just didn't have a lot of privileges either. You know, I didn't grow up, starving or anything. My mom always made sure there was food on the table. You know, I didn't have that hard of a life, but it made it feel that way too, being so far apart from someone who had a lot more privileges than I did.
It made you think about like, wow, I guess you don't really think about it as you're growing up, like all these privileges that you have until you take that step back and realize, oh, I have to do all these things, and yet all these people behind me, well, they may have had some of them, they've also experienced more hardship than I have. It was just like, I don't know if I like being in the front and being what all eyes can see.
mhm. So what was your opinion on that article?
yeah, I
after
think
reading it for a third time.
yeah, I think that activity is a really good way of showing it like concretely. I've never done something like that, but the one, I don't know why, but the one that always sticks out to me, the one privilege is being able to shop without being like looked at suspiciously, just because that's something that like I do all the time and I never thought about it before I read it, and it's like, wow, I don't know like how it would feel to like be watched by the store owner. You know, it's ridiculous to me how like skin color can make something like that happen.
Yeah.
I do think, Ezekiel, we have a girl in our class who is
From Iraq, or her mother's from Iraq. She's from here.
She's American, but she wears the hijab, and she talked about one time where she went to the store and basically got confronted by someone and started telling her to go back to her own country, and she had her daughters with her, and her daughters are kindergarten and younger.
First grade and preschool.
First grade and preschool, and her daughters were with her, and it just like, she didn't know what to do, and she's like, if you have any questions, I am open, ask me, I'm an open book. And it's hard because she's like, well, how do I go back to my own country? I was born here, I am in my country.
Right.
And that's what I think of when that kind of stuff gets brought up too, I think of her.
Yeah, and it happened right before class, so we talked about it in class for probably about 20 minutes, and it was just kind of one of those things that you don't ever, I mean, it's just weird hearing about it from someone that you're close to, and it's like, wow, that actually happens to people, and that's so absurd to think that happens.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a city, like, come on, it's like.
In Washington, we're very progressive, like, state. We don't. Well, I guess.
Well, that's I'm thinking because it happened in a bigger city, not like a small town. Small towns still, it seems like, are a little behind the times with some stuff. But I mean, it was just ridiculous to hear that had happened. So I mean, I kind of think about that when I'm reading stuff like this too, just about. But it's just like the feeling that you wouldn't be able to go into a store and.
Or someone would, if you did go into a certain store, someone could confront you.
Yeah.
For being,
being you.
Being you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if it's ever, if these attitudes are ever, like, going to slow or stop, or if they're just going to continue to be strengthened, like, by the attitudes that people have as a society. It just, I don't know. It's hard to think about because are there ever going to be
There's
people...
that video that...
Oh, just like, we have, like, my grandparents are obviously behind the times, like, they still hold prejudiced views. So it's just like, I don't know.
That reminded me of something my grandmother told me when she heard that I'm doing special ed. She started using terms that she used in the 60s. And every time she used one, I just cringed a little. And I'm like, no. And then I would tell her the right way, the culturally accepted way to say it. And she was like, oh. And then 2 minutes later, she'd say another word. And I'm just like, oh, my God.
Right.
Well, and it seems like it's common for grandparents. I mean, in that generation, some people, still, I mean, they think that some things are okay. But I was thinking when you're talking about what you were talking about just a few minutes ago about if things are going to change, I was thinking about that video where the guy from starts with a P. It was a long video where he was talking about Oriental.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So he was showing news footage from the Oklahoma City bombing, and they just all assumed that it was from the Middle East, and it's just like it was news stations doing that. So it's like they're feeding people that information, and that's just encouraging people to continue thinking like that. So until that media stops doing that, then I think it's it won't go away.
I don't think it'll ever stop with media because they need
someone.
They need news. They need audience, and
people hate the most right now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think...
And that was before 9/11.
Yeah,
that was in 95. So you were like...
Well, I don't remember. I was 3. I don't remember 9/11 though, because I was too young to realize. Well, I remember it, but I don't remember the way the media portrayed it.
How old were you in 9/11?
Like 10, right?
It was 2009. So I was 9, and it was like my 3rd or 4th day of 4th grade. And like the whole school.
But the video, I mean, by the time I had heard about it, because I was 12 or 13 when the Oklahoma City bombing happened, I mean, they'd already figured out who had done it. So I didn't know that any of that or that they had thought that it was someone from the middle, or groups of people from the Middle East. So that just kind of surprised me that they were just presenting it like that without even having information. Like they were just assuming.
Did they do that for 9/11? Or just
I think so.
Well, what I've seen, I guess, if they have the power to edit, from what I've seen on the anniversary stuff, none of it's like accusing a country. It's like, oh, we're definitely under attack. This is
that's I think
that's what happened. And then
the first thing they thought it might have been an accident, and then after that they realized that it wasn't.
After the second hit.
Yeah, because the first one hit, and then like a few minutes had gone by before the second one hit.
But I don't remember. I didn't remember even seeing the anniversary stuff and like specifically.
Oh well, I saw it when it was on. Like my dad came. I was at home and he just came in. He's like, "Turn on the TV. Look what's going on." And
I woke up and came out, and all of a sudden it was on the TV.
So I mean, that's...
You had graduated, I think, didn't you? Yeah, because I was a junior and I was on my way driving to school, and I kept changing the radio station because I wasn't hearing any music. And I'm like, oh my God! And then I'm so used to Kiss doing their Kiss-a-thon. and I have to turn it off during Kiss-a-thon because I can't handle. I'm like bawling in my car when I'm
Oh yeah.
at Children's Hospital, and I'm bawling. So I'm like, oh, I don't. I'm like, I thought I just did Children's Hospital. Oh my God, I can't listen to this. But then I kept turning it, and nothing was on. And then I get to school, and I'm like, oh, like.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that however they're portraying it is how we're going to interpret it, unless you can step back and really look at. I mean, and a lot of people don't have that ability to step back and really look at big picture, look at details, and put their own pieces together. So I think until that happens, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon,
Definitely.
which is sad, but that's why I don't watch the news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I like to form my own opinions on things. But I mean, that just shocked me to see that, because I knew that it was a man from that area, a white Christian man who had done it, and then to hear that they were blaming people in the Middle East. So
Very crazy.
it is.
So for the way some of your writings, Rita, I like that you talked about how you read Janet Wong's story and how you read it blandly and how she read it, and it was like a lot more lively and interesting, and how you can bring that to the classroom, having an author read it. I like that. I never thought of it that way, because how much more interesting would a poetry be if someone can read it for them and throw out that
The way it's supposed to be read.
not just the way, but throw out that voice,
Yeah. And did you say that something about her reading it how her grandpa?
Yeah, I did.
And I think that if someone else read it like that, then that could be offensive.
Yeah,
But the fact is, she's probably just taking how her grandpa sounded to her, And I think we all can, if we grew up around our grandparents, we all could talk, maybe
Use their inappropriate words.
no, but I mean, I think the fact that she's doing it, that's okay. But like, if I was to read it like that, that would be offensive.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was
Because-
just, I don't know, maybe it's is it microaggression or macroaggression, is that what it's called? Like, part of me is starting to overthink things to the point where, like, everything is aggressive. Like, is that what the word is?
I don't know, but it would probably be micro if you're like looking at it like little bits and like overthinking it.
That's the thing, is I think I'm overthinking something because I want to be politically correct. Almost, just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't mean to offend anyone. I feel like I would offend someone, and that's not my intention.
That's why you show the video, because it's her writing, and that's
Right.
and,
She can do it.
Right?
but no, I think that goes with like the whole color blindness thing, because that's what I've always tried to do. I'm like, I just want to see them as people, everyone as people, and just one big group of people. But then I understand now that you should look at them like everyone. I mean, look at individuals, look at all the things that make them an individual, but then, I mean, there's a nice balance between the two.
Getting that balance is the
That-
tricky part.
That color blindness article, I remember being that person too, a long time ago, where I'm like, I don't see skin color. I see everybody is the same. We're all people. And then I took a seminar, and I watched these group of people, and then these group of men, I don't know if there's women in it, but these group of men talking, one was racist, one was African American, one was Asian, I don't know if it was Chinese, but I'm just going to go Asian. And they were talking, and then the African American guy's like, when you say that, it tells me that you don't see me, and they were like fighting in this video. And that's when I changed my mind, and that was like a good 6 years ago. So when I hear people say that, I cringe. Kind of like the you thing that you do. You said you cringe when you see the you, you are. I'm just bringing that up as an example, what makes you cringe. But it makes me cringe, and I don't know what to say, like, to people who say that now to me, knowing where my thinking is, and I don't want to start that confrontational business quite yet. I'm not ready to go there, but for me, it makes me cringe because I hear so many people say that. I don't see color. I'm like, well, then you don't see who I am, because I am a person of color. Sorry.
No, I understand. I mean,
Makes perfect sense. Part of your identity is your skin color.
And not just your skin color, it's your culture, because, you said you're fair-skinned, blonde hair, but you're not of 100% European descent. You have Mexican descent, too, that nobody really sees when they look at you.
You see Native American in this?
Exactly. And
I
same
think
with,
everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same
I mean,
here. Hmm.
It's just, I mean, at this point, so many people have moved to this country,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
there's just all sorts of, yeah,
Melting together.
very infrequently do you see someone who's 100%
yeah,
something.
no, yeah.
Hmm.
That's that one video where that woman, well, I've seen that video before, where the woman is jogging and the guy stops
Oh
her.
god, that.
Yeah,
And
I've seen that before too.
when I worked in Colorado, there was a guy who was very, very much like the other guy.
Oh god.
And he would say, "I'm American," and I'm like, so, and I actually said, "You're Native American?" And he's like, "My people are from here," and he just like looked offended, and I'm just like, okay, seriously, we're all from other places if you think about it, unless you're a Native American. But I kind of was thinking of that guy when that, and it just, that video makes me cringe a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just
Hmm.
because,
It's a funny video, but at the same time, it's not funny because it's really,
It's true.
yeah.
and I like the part that is it her grandmother or great grandmother? I think she said great grandmother is from Korea, and he's like, well, my grandmother or grandparent. So he's even like newer to this country than she is,
Yeah, it's,
or is generationally he's newer.
and then the video of the one kid doing stand-up comedy, it looked like.
Poetry?
I
I
don't
know
know.
there's one that was stand-up comedy, and then there's
Yeah.
the slam poetry.
The slam poetry, I think is what it is.
Because there's right underneath the video where
Alex Dang. His name is Alex
Poetry.
Dang.
He's the poetry slam.
Okay.
He's the poetry slam.
Yeah, I like how he started, and then all of a sudden it was just like in your face kind of stuff, and it was, to me, it was very powerful message.
Mhm.
It was like, yeah, would you use these words if you knew what the history of it was?
Which is not to use.
I never even heard of the one word.
Which one?
Well, no, my grandma used to call people from Asia that, and that makes me cringe. But she would be 95 right now, so that's, I mean, that gives you an idea of
Yeah, that makes
the
sense.
generation that she's from. But no, the derogatory term that he was talking about, I don't even know what it is. Starts with a C.
Chink.
Hmm.
I never heard of that before.
The
Yeah,
first time I heard about it was in high school.
In preschool?
No, in high school.
Oh, high school.
We were watching a movie from like 1910 or earlier, and it was a silent film, and our teacher's like, when the words, these words will come up in the video, and this is what they mean, and this is why they were called that, and, obviously we don't call them that anymore, but it's like, this is what was culturally acceptable back then. So they even put it in movies. It just fosters the idea of what it is and what is not okay to call people.
So Emily, you were going to say something?
Oh, I never knew like the history behind. I think it's really cool that your teacher told you why that word is used, because I have never like known the meaning. And going back to what we've said in past discussions, like, oh, well, that's just a derogatory term because it is. Like, that's how I always, like, kind of like the N word, it's just like, oh, that, we just say that. So I think it's like, it makes it to put more meaning to it, to know the reason and like know how wrong it really is to be saying.
Which is funny because with
Terms.
the N word, you have African Americans using it constantly, trying to
Right.
own it, as
Mhm.
what they say. But then there's other ones who say you don't own that word. That is not a word you own. You cannot
But who knows if people who use it truly know
what the meaning
because they're
behind it.
younger people and they might not completely know the history. I mean, they know like probably the history, the surface history. I mean, like just the very basic history.
Yeah.
But like really getting into it, and if they did, then maybe they wouldn't use it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I know that, my high school had a large Asian population, which is, I think, part of why our teacher explained it. It's because she didn't want any of us, well, we weren't going to use it, but she wanted, I think, everybody to know what it meant, because we have so many different variations of people from Asia. We have Vietnamese, we have Chinese, Japanese, Korean, And we had
Filipino, just so you know. We're
Filipino,
Asian.
yes.
I had to Google that, just so you know.
We actually had like we had like 1 or 2 students out of the 500 in my class. We had a lot of Chinese and Vietnamese and Japanese, so we were exposed to all these different cultures, and eventually you just stop, you don't see it as different, or you stop, well, why did you do that, or why did you use those words? It's just, you come to accept that, okay, he's from Korea, he's gonna eat, food that may not smell the best by the time lunch comes around and we'll eat, but it's what they do, and you just need to accept it. But I think being in that environment definitely helps. I don't know, not accept it, but just internalize that this is what they do, and this is what you do, and it doesn't make you any different, it's just how you were raised.
What did you think of that video where the other video where the guy was like saying all those questions? When you were,
We had those questions. And
it seems, I don't know, it just,
Wait, which video you got? I'm on 4 hours this week. Tell me
the
which video.
comedian one?
yeah, the comedian one where he just like,
got those.
do you do this? Do you do this? Are you this? Why don't you do this? Blah, blah, blah. Like just back and forth.
We heard that. I was laughing the rest of it. Like, oh, I've heard that because I dated a Pacific Islander in high school, but he was raised by Chinese parents, and so he would literally talk about, because he would watch videos because he thought they were funny, and he's like, oh, I've been asked that question and that question and that question and that question, and it was just like, I don't think people actually ask you those questions. And the video I was laughing, like, oh yeah, I remember talking about that and that one and that one, and it was just like, people actually ask you these, like.
Yeah.
Some of them just like, a ninja's real, and I'm like, they didn't ask that. He's like, oh yeah, they did. And I'm like, what did you say? He's like, I said yes, just to mess with him. I'm like,
I would have suggested.
I was like, oh my god. But yeah, it was just like the amount. You'd think that people wouldn't ask such questions, but they
But it's
do.
like, where do people even, I mean, it's like, you don't go around, imagine having someone ask you all those
I know.
questions that are like stereotypes. I don't know, it's just weird, because I would
Do you
never
eat
imagine.
cheeseburgers at every meal? Do you like
Yeah, I mean,
Potatoes.
potatoes?
I'm a rice person. But every time I bring up rice, my husband is like, why can't we have potatoes? I'm like, because I want rice.
but that's the thing is like, I mean, why is it okay? I wouldn't even think of most of those questions to ask somebody. So it's like, why do people think it's okay to do stuff like that?
And then after him and dating someone who was Vietnamese, and he also got a lot of the questions. Well, are you Vietnamese? Are you Korean? Are you this? Are you that? How do you tell the difference? And I'm like, and he would answer the questions, we tell the difference by this and this. And it's like, oh, it only makes sense. But just the fact that somebody's blatantly like going up to him and being like, are you Korean? Are you Japanese? Are you Vietnamese? How do you tell the difference? And I'm like, I don't answer these people. I tell them to go away. It's none of your business.
I like
Yeah,
the
it's
books.
just weird that we don't get asked like, oh, well, where are your parents from? Are you Irish? Or it's not as common, and it's just so weird that it's like that.
Yeah.
I get mixed up. I'm either, some people get me and they say, oh, you're Filipino. I'm like, ding, ding, ding. And another's like, oh, are you Hispanic? I'm like, nope. I dated a guy in high school who was Mexican, and he lived in a house full of Mexicans, and one of his roommates didn't speak English at all, and kept trying to argue with me that I am.
That you were Mexican.
And I'm like, pretty sure I'm not. And but I was taking a Spanish class, and I'm like, no, habla español. He's like, yeah, you do. I'm like, no, I really
You're just messing with his mind, Nicole.
don't. But he was so sure of it, and but yeah, it's crazy how
Blunt people can be.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The children's books. You want to go over those real quick?
Sure.
I like the children's books. I want to keep them. I don't want to give it back to the library.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it comes to, one of you described it beautiful, like the book was beautiful. I don't know which one was that. I think
It was not me. I highlighted whoever.
it was Jutori.
Oh gosh.
You used it as you described it as a beauty, like each beauty.
Yeah.
And
Because
it was like, and that's what it comes down to, is it is beautiful how the words in there are, and like she said, are positive views of, because, you know, me being a little tanner than average, you grow up either liking your skin color or not liking it. I went through a phase because I went to Indiana, center of the middle of the field, where it was nothing but white suburban kind of people, and it was I wanted fair skin, and I was like, how do I get fair skin? I stayed inside the whole summer.
Aww.
I didn't want to darken up, and then there was time, and I think a lot of people of skin color go through that process where they hate their skin. It's too dark, it's too light, and a lot of it comes down to, I think, in the Chinese culture, people who were tan worked in the fields.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were fair-skinned, you didn't have to work hard at all. You were of privilege in that culture, where people who worked in the fields, the rice field, were out in the hot sun all day, so they were dark, and they were viewed lesser than the fair-skinned people of their own culture. So, you know, I think everybody goes to that. And so that book to me is like, I want that in my classroom. I don't want kids to ever feel that, you know, like that one in that story, I think the girl was like, I wish I had fair skin, and the teacher was like, I think it's that book. And she was like, oh, I wish I had your, you know, like she basically said to the girl, like, your skin is beautiful, you know, like, and I think a lot of it needs to be, the kids need to understand. They need to learn, but like accept who they are themselves, because it's really hard to be looked at. So
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting to see a different perspective on how to view it.
yeah, the way she brought like the history, the lineage of how my grandma's this, my grandpa's that, my mom is this, my mom is that, and it brings it back.
The seaweed, the suitcase of seaweed.
No, it was still in the book. The Black of the Berry.
She goes like,
Okay,
my
I didn't know it.
grandma's
Yeah.
raspberry color, my grandma's blackberry cheeks.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
Well, I highlighted that. I liked how you said that just labeling people black, white, Asian just doesn't do justice in describing the many colors that people come in. And that book really did illustrate a whole array of colors and describe them in a really beautiful way, so then kids could say, wow, I am.
Yeah.
And,
I am honey, or I am this. It's like that, like saying and accepting and being proud of who you are, I mean, it's a lot.
Because it's hard. You know, it was just, I mean, when I got dropped into that middle of Indiana, I had come from Hawaii, so I was a lot darker than this. Like, I went from the Philippines to Hawaii, and I went to the middle of Indiana, where it snows and there's no sun. And there was, I think, one other kid, and he was an African American kid. It was just me and that kid. And he and I felt like we didn't really connect with the other kids. And I remember trying out for a play, because it was a Christian school on top of that. St. James Lutheran.
Wow, hardcore.
Yeah, even the way the parents and teachers viewed me, it was hard, because I remember coming in and the first thing out of the teacher's mouth, we're doing this in math. Can you do this? And I'm like, yeah, we're past that, and where I came from. And it was just like, why would you even say that to a kid? Can you do, like, the way she said it, and she said it slow, and I'm like, I can understand you, just so you know. I speak English too. But it really is crazy how that really can affect, and I think that book in the classroom will help.
Maybe want another one for different, I guess, cultural groups, like Indians.
Do they have one for those?
I
Because
don't
I'm
know.
about to Google it.
I don't know.
I think everyone experiences that. I remember not liking my skin color.
But that's the thing.
And I would go tanning, and it's like, and I just looked funny. And then someone called me. No, I just didn't. It didn't go. I mean, but it's the same sort of thing. I think everyone deals with it. And then someone called my skin color peaches and cream, and I'm like, ooh, I like the sound of that. Not real. And I'm like, I'll take peaches and cream. And as soon as he told me, and he was like an older teacher, and as soon as he told me that, then I quit tanning and I just accepted that, this is my skin color. I think that it's just a positive way of looking at it instead of, pale or dark or, it's just like, I think adding these descriptive words to describe something.
Positive words.
Positive descriptive words. So
definitely. I would like to have, like you said, one of each.
Yeah, one
book
of each book.
for, I mean, like.
They might be out there.
Oh.
I'm going to Google it. I really want, I'm in the midst of hitting buy on my Amazon account for that book.
So is there anything else that we should talk about before we wrap up since I have to head off to work?
Nope.
We pretty much touched on everything.
Okay.
Macklemore song.
Oh, that was
gosh.
interesting.
Love that. It was, again, with this poetry slam, it was in your face kind of stuff.
Some of his deeper songs kind of do that.
But no, he made a good point that, he doesn't have that background that where rap originated from, but he's accepting that and
he's aware of it.
Yeah, he's
That's
aware
the
of
thing.
it.
He's being aware of it. No, you're fine accepting it too, but the fact that he's aware of it, and I think a lot of us would do better to be aware of a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I like this class because it's doing that.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
It's actually building quite well into our past class in the summer, and even
Current class.
even our current class now, which has very little to do with diversity.
Because the books that it's been describing, because he was talking about poetry, I think, one time in the readings for Leanne's class. And then it had House of Scorpion as an example, and it was just like, oh, look at all these things that I'm learning.
Like, oh, we learned about that and that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, I guess that's it until next weekend. Or
Okay.
Next week.
Week, not weekend.
I'm glad 4 hours is All right, bye, Emily.
Okay, bye.
bye.